Hello, my sweet GOPO angels. Welcome back. I'm going to finish up chapter 12 today, which is about political ideology. And we're going to see political ideology in the form of how the government kind of controls our monetary policy and also through our social policy. So, with monetary policy, that's different from fiscal policy, which is what we learned about yesterday. So, fiscal policy is where the government taxes and spends. Monetary policy is where the government manipulates the money supply in order to curb or inflation or cause economic changes. So if they print too much money, and that's the thing, someone's got to kind of be in control of that. We have like crazy inflation, so we don't want that. We don't want it where they were like in Germany, where they were literally taking wheelbarrows of money just to go buy a loaf of bread because they printed too much. So there's a group in charge of this known as the Federal Reserve System, or just the Fed, and they're responsible for making this monetary policy. So what are some of the things they do? Number one, they buy and sell bonds. And when they buy and sell bonds, these are known as open market operations. And that's a way where they can influence the interest rates. So when we borrow money or save money, those rates are basically decided by the Fed. If they buy a bunch of bonds and they're going to flood the market with money, that's going to lower interest rates. But if they sell bonds, that means that they're taking money back, and that means they're going to make the interest rates go up that we would use for borrowing or for saving. They also set the reserve rates that requires banks to have a certain amount of money that they keep in their deposit. So I'll just tell you this right now. If you have $1,000 in your savings account, it's not all there. The bank lends out, let's say the reserve rate's 20%. The bank can lend out $800 of your $1,000 in the bank. Now, if you go to the bank and you say, hey, can I have my $1,000? I want it all. Yes, they will give it to you. But that's how banks make money. They loan out, the people who save their money in the forms of mortgages or home equity loans or just a regular loan and a traditional loan. And the Fed is the one that sets that. And like I said before, they not only influence the interest rates we get, but they also influence what are known as discount rates, which are the interest rates that banks have to pay if they want to borrow money from the Fed. So when the economy starts growing, when the economy is growing, you're going to see inflation. So they step in with this monetary policy to kind of curb it so prices don't go too high. But then at the same time, when the economy is tanking and we see deflation like we did at the beginning of COVID, that's very, very, very bad. And the Fed can step in and kind of try to fix that too, usually by flooding the markets with money and lowering interest rates. All right, the last thing we're going to talk about is how political ideology can influence social policy. We kind of are wrapping this up because we talked about healthcare before. Is it a right or is it a privilege? Those on the left believe that it is a right, and those on the right believe it is a privilege. Now, when did this first start? When did the federal government first come into play where they're like, healthcare is a right, and we are going to give it to people via the federal government, via what are known as transfer funds, which there are taxes that go directly to this. This was with LBJ. He created the Great Society. That was his version of the New Deal or Teddy Roosevelt's Square Deal. It's just their legislative program. And in it, he's like, not only when people retire do they need an income, which was what FDR created with Social Security, they also need health care. So he created Medicare, which we still have today. So he also created Medicaid. And this is how I always remembered the difference. Medicare is care for the elderly. So it's health insurance given to those 65 and older. Medicaid is aid to the poor. So that is health insurance that's given to those who are below the poverty line. And as of 2012, the U.S. had the highest medical care costs in the world. So that does help those who are in poverty. Now, another thing that was done by those on the left was the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. This was a major overhaul in the healthcare system, and this is what we have today. It's definitely not popular among Republicans. The Republicans have tried to not only make new laws that overturn it in Congress, but they've also taken it to the courts like dozens of times to try to get it seen as unconstitutional. One time it was up for debate about that, and the vote was 5-4, and Justice Roberts, who is usually conservative, actually sided with the left on this, said that the Affordable Care Act is constitutional because the government can tax with the 16th Amendment, so therefore they can do something like this. So what, there's goods and bads to it. More Americans are getting access to healthcare coverage. And liberals argue that this is good and it should be widely available because if you have a healthy nation, you're more productive and it's good for the overall just health of the nation, not for lack of a better word. But conservatives are against it. They said people need to be responsible for their own decision making. This kind of goes along with the idea of they don't want the government involved in your business, and in this case, they feel like the government shouldn't be involved. Another place that we see social differences in social policies is with education. So education is a socialized program in the country, meaning that it's public education, K-12, is similar to socialism for the simple fact that it's government controlled and government paid for, or taxpayer paid for. And people who are against it, those on the right, feel like this is something that shouldn't be necessarily forced by the government. You shouldn't have to be able to go to one school. You should make it more like, almost like make education like it would be on like a competitive market, like other like services like getting a haircut or getting an oil change. Like they feel like that would be, if you make the schools compete with each other and people can choose where to go, that's like the voucher program. It's basically this voucher that says, hey kid, if you don't like your school, you can like use this like voucher to help pay for a school you'd rather go to. And then the idea is, just like in a competitive market, the businesses that are bad will just kind of go out of business, where the businesses that are good will thrive and the competition helps them thrive. Well, in this case, they're saying that with schools. So conservatives definitely are for this. Not only could they attend any school, but they're using this voucher to help pay for people to join public or private schools, excuse me. But opponents say it basically, you're draining money that these schools, these public schools already need, and you're taking that away from them, and you're denying public school children the equality of opportunity, which is the idea that everybody has the opportunity to get an education, to get ahead in life, which is actually, ironically enough, a very conservative viewpoint. So this chapter showed you ideology. It showed you the difference between left and right, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, and just some of the ideas on some pretty hot topics of today. So have a good one. Talk to you later, kiddos.